Before we start, let me just say that there will be 3 different photographic images which will be displayed on the screen here. All of those images will be included in the press release to follow. There will be a link in the press release to follow that will allow you access to them. Obviously, you're more than welcome to take video of them as they are brought up. They're going to be brought up during the period of time when Paul Riddell, who's the chief of our Dangerous Drug Offenders Unit, or I should say division, is speaking, just by way of some level of preparedness. And Paul, you're going to signal Elliot about which slides? Okay. All right. Is everybody ready? Good afternoon, and thank you all for being here. We are here for a special purpose, and that purpose is to talk about a particular takedown, arrest, and prosecution involving the distribution of primarily fentanyl in the area of Kensington. And we are joined today by some wonderful people. But I want to make sure we start out by giving a ton of credit where it is due, and it is due to the Pennsylvania State Police and also the Philadelphia Police Department, who worked very closely with our Dangerous Drug Offender Unit on this investigation. As I'm sure you can imagine, these investigations sometimes connect to other investigations, things in the past, things in the future. We're not going to get into all of that, but we are going to get into the specifics of this particular investigation, takedown, these arrests, and prosecution to follow. I do want to acknowledge some of the wonderful people who are here. We have with us ADA Paul Riddell, that's R-E-D-D-E-L. Am I right about that? Yes. Okay. Who is the chief of the DA's Dangerous Drug Offender Unit. This is a unit that we are trying to grow, hopefully with the help of counsel. And yes, I know they're standing here, which is why I said that. But it's a unit that we're trying to grow into a division for reasons that we will discuss. We have with us ADA Bill Fritzy, who is the chief of the DAO's Gun Violence Task Force. He is here among other reasons because this investigation, this bust, involves guns. And guns that were used in close connection to professional drug dealing activity in the area of Kensington. We have with us Council Member Ketsi Lozada, who is from District Number 7. We have Mark Squilla, Philadelphia City Council Member, District Number 1. We have Mike Driscoll, who is Council Member, District Number 6. And then we have Jim Harity, who is an at-large City Council Member with us as well. A couple of preliminary points, I think, just to contextualize where we are. I'm not going to get heavy into the data today, but because I look at the data every day, sometimes 2 or 3 times a day, when something pops up of note, I notice it. And this is what I noticed. As of today, 95 homicides in Philadelphia. Last year, 152. Year before, 176. Year before, 196. That was 2021. We were in the height of the pandemic. So today we're 95. And then we were 196. It is literally less than half the number of homicides that we had at the height. Is that a good thing? No. It's a good thing when we have 0. But does it show year after year steady and important improvement? Yes, it does. And part of the reason for that is busts like this, investigations like this. It's not just taking the 16-year-old off the corner with 3 little bags in his pocket. That has its place, but 60 years in Kensington have established that doesn't fix it, because those people have been getting busted all that time. This is about the kind of progress you see when there's an emphasis on big-time drug dealing and mid-level drug dealing. The mid-level in particular has been less policed, and it has been less investigated and less arrested and prosecuted than the lower level prosecution. So I think that the people who are here, and I think that our state police and Philadelphia police friends deserve a lot of credit for the reality that we are seeing sweeping changes and sweeping improvements in gun violence that should encourage us to do more and to do it better. Philadelphia District Attorney's Office began hosting regular meetings with council members, the Philadelphia Police Department, other law enforcement, other stakeholders that have become known as the Kensington Caucus meetings. This is something that we have been doing, including with each of the council members who are here today, since towards the end of the summer last year, and it's something that we continue to do, at least when we don't have earthquakes. It is something that we continue to do. Over the last several months, we have added additional partners who include additional members of the police department, the sheriff's office, the chief public defender, and people from her office, and also others from the mayor's office and other service providers who are central to the innovative approach that we are trying to bring about in Kensington. The goal of, or at least one of the goals of these regular meetings is very intentional. It is to prioritize going after gun violence and increasing public safety with a balanced approach that uses all the tools available, not just the couple that have been used and failed for decades. This kind of increased communication and collaboration has yielded very significant results in helping, in my opinion, I hope we share this opinion, but it has yielded significant results in helping us to identify common ground, opportunities for improvement, and also the challenges that I think everybody recognizes we face when we try to do something about an area that has been blighted and is and remains terribly blighted for 60 years. One of the very specific ideas that has come up out of those meetings is appropriate and strategic enforcement of priority corners and of drug houses, also known as trap houses. This is a situation where law enforcement can't just talk to itself. Law enforcement also has to talk to council members, their constituents, the people whose job it is and who were elected to let us know exactly what the problems are. And so we have been engaging in that process. And it is our hope that in a truly collaborative and coordinated way that we will be able to take down some priority drug corners, some trap houses, in a way that is similar to something this office did back in, I believe, 2019 with Kip and Cambria, which was a multi-generational, decades-long, fully operating professional drug dealing operation that, with the help of our law enforcement partners, was taken down in a pretty serious way. That was another one of what I would call these mid-level drug cases. It's not Pablo Escobar, but it's also not the 16-year-old on the corner who's using and selling a few bags at a time. These are professional drug dealers. These are people who are not just doing it out of addiction. These are people who are bringing an awful lot of blight, an awful lot of misery, and an awful lot of danger to neighborhoods. All right. Now, having said that, I think that I should leave to Paul Riddell to explain in more detail the drug bust of a Kensington fentanyl operation, including some firearms, involving defendant Jada, J-A-D-A, Williams. Mr. Riddell?
Thank you. Good afternoon. First and foremost, I'd like to again thank the Pennsylvania State Police, Southeast Strike Force, and the Philadelphia Police Department for their endeavors and their hard work. These are the kind of cases they do on a daily basis, and these are the kind of cases the Dangerous Drug Division, and what we hope to build out as a division, will get involved in on a daily basis. Currently, the Dangerous Drug Offenders Unit does long-term drug investigations, mostly with DEA, but we share and collaborate with all sorts of agencies, including PSP, FBI, and the surrounding counties. On that note, the case you'll see before you today is literally one of those cases that caused such disruption in a community. It's not the kilos you see, it's not the movies you see, but it's the kind of case that people see in their neighborhoods that bring violence and destruction and bring the kind of untoward activities that they don't want to keep in their neighborhoods when they want their kids to go out on the sidewalk and play. So specifically in this case, in January of this year, the Pennsylvania State Police started to conduct a drug investigation of the sales of fentanyl/heroin. At this point, I'm sure you're all familiar that most of what's out there is now fentanyl, more so than even heroin. And so they started making undercover buys, and on 3 occasions they made undercover buys directly from the defendant in this case. Ultimately, it resulted in search warrants being, or a search warrant being executed on the residence of 3125 Kensington Avenue. And in that place, you'll see, if we can get, what you see is the top photo is a further away photo, but the bag you see is a bag of bullets. And this is what folks are storing in their homes. And if we can get to the next picture, these are 2 firearms, and if you look closely, you'll see a 9mm and a .32 caliber. And these are the instruments to enforce the rules of the drug trade. And if we can go to the next photo, and this is some of the packets that we recovered and obtained through this investigation. And if you look, this is about 1,100 packets. Each one can represent a death sentence for anybody. And as someone who's done those cases and done delivery cases It is a hard call to make when you have to talk to a parent, a mother, a brother about how their son died. And I just actually did this week upon a sentence we got last year when the defendant is going to be paroled and had to make that call to make sure they were informed of what was going on. Those are very tough questions to ask to receive in those matters, and very tough answers to give, because those folks aren't coming home. But I'll tell you this much, there's 1,100 packets that aren't on the street, and there's 2 guns that aren't coming back, and that's going to give the folks of that community that much more rest in this case. If you have any questions, I'll defer to the DA or myself. Questions? My name? His first name is Paul, P-A-U-L. Last name is Riddell, R-E-D-D-E-L. And unfortunately, or wherewithal, it starts with the color red, just like my hair. So. Oh, it is the supervisor of the Dangerous Drug Offenders Unit.
Yeah, we will be taking further questions at the end of the presentation. And any questions you have for Mr. Riddell, he'll be happy to answer at that time on this topic. All right. I do want to, Elliot, could you please go back to the first image? I just want to point out a couple of things before we move forward with this, because it may be helpful to you. So these are 2 separate photographs. I just want to make sure we're clear on that. Those are 2 separate photographs. The lower photograph is a close-up of something that is depicted in the upper photograph. The upper photograph, if you look closely, shows a plastic bag knotted that contains live ammunition, and that is the same image that you see down below. Next slide, please, Elliot. All right, so once again, you have two different photographic images. The upper one is from farther away. The lower one is from closer in. They are both depicting the same handgun. This gun is this gun, okay? My understanding is that that is a .32, am I correct?
32 caliber underneath and a 9mm.
Okay, so the revolver underneath is 9mm?
32.
It's 32. The revolver underneath, that has sort of a purple color, that is the .32. And the semi-automatic weapon on top of it, that would be the 9mm Ruger weapon we're referring to. Third slide, please. Oh, I'm sorry. Can you go back? Down here, in the bottom of that photograph, you will see drug packaging that has been tied up in a clear plastic bag. Next slide, please. And this is a depiction that I think sheds some light on the scale of the operation. What you're seeing here is fentanyl. Fentanyl takes up very little space. The packages are small. It is horrifically dangerous to human life. And here you'll see these little groups of packages that are bound with a rubber band. Those are commonly referred to in the street as bundles. They're usually 13 packages that are held together with a rubber band. There were about 80 bundles that were recovered here, so 80 times 13 is more than 1,000 packages, and even though these packages look quite small, please remember how incredibly potent and incredibly dangerous fentanyl is. The reality is that even though it is not always readily available, the number of fatal drug overdoses in the city of Philadelphia per year now is on the order of 1,200, something like that. You're basically looking at someone dies of a fatal drug overdose every time you sit down to take a meal. Obviously, our homicide situation is also of incredible interest. That's less than 1 person a day. We are speaking of fatal overdoses killing 3 to 4 people every day in Philadelphia, and overwhelmingly, the cause of those fatal overdoses is fentanyl that is either pure or it is mixed in, which is more common, with other substances. People doing it are not chemists. They do not care about the safety of other human beings. And so it is very, very common that drugs that have fentanyl mixed into them are of totally unpredictable potency and are likely to be fatal, even to people who have been trapped in their addiction for 25 years. They're liable to be fatal, despite the fact that the person using it may believe they've taken the same dose as they've taken for many, many years. All right. So with that little bit of context, I would now like to move on. And it is my pleasure, it is my honor to invite members of council who have been kind enough not only to be here, but to assist us so frequently with meetings of what is now known as the Kensington Caucus. I would like to invite all of them to come forward, share the microphone as they see fit, and make whatever comments that they would like to make.
Good afternoon. I'm Ketsi Lozada. I am the council member for the 7th Councilmatic District. Let me begin by saying thank you to District Attorney Krasner and everyone involved in this case. I'd also like to respond to his comment about our meetings and how often we are meeting and the partners and the stakeholders who have been at the table. Those meetings have been extremely important. They've been very successful. They are part of the reason why we are where we are today. And I think that we can all agree that while Kensington and the Harrogate community are not where they need to be, we are in a much better place than we were 30, 60 days ago. And that is as a direct result of the work that we have been doing collaboratively. And so I'm extremely grateful for everyone's commitment at the table to be able to come together. And although sometimes we don't agree, we always walk away on a very positive note and ready to continue moving the work forward and with a firm commitment of improving the quality of life for the residents of Kensington. And because of that, that is why cases like this are extremely important. We know the direct result of open-air narcotic sales and open-air narcotics use. We see the impact that they are having on that community, on the children and the businesses and the families in that community. And so, you know, I'm looking forward to continuing to work across organizations to be able to bring down organizations that have been established across the Harrogate, Kensington community that continue to impact negatively on those residents. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Councilman Harity. For me, this is fantastic because I live literally a block away from where this young lady was selling her wares. My grandchildren walk around this neighborhood. As my colleague said, we are now working out of the silos, not one unit, one person, one organization doing their own thing over here. We are coming together to talk and to hash out where we don't agree and make strides where we do agree. And I just think that with this today, while our district attorney, as he said, this isn't Pablo Escobar, but this is a person that is directly responsible for destroying parts of that neighborhood. The guns we got off the street, you know, in my neighborhood, we know far well that what 2 guns can do in the hands of somebody who means to do harm. So I'm just grateful for the collaboration. I'm looking forward to working more with the mayor's office, the police department, the district attorney's office, and quite frankly, anybody who wants to help us out with this plight. There will be law and order, and this is just one step.
Good afternoon. I'm Councilmember Mike Driscoll, and I want to give my heartfelt thanks to District Attorney Krasner and Philadelphia law enforcement for doing what they've done. And we know that this isn't easy. When we formed this Kensington caucus, we took a burden that was ignored for a long time, and we know that we're going to be judged at the end of the day of how successful we're going to be. But that's not why we did it. We did it because we care about the people that live in Kensington. We care about those young children that are going to school, stepping over these folks and destroying their legacy. And we weren't going to allow the status quo to remain. And so when things like this happen, when we actually make a dent right there in the 3100 block of Kensington Avenue, we know that the federal government, the state government, the city government, and all aspects of law enforcement and city council all working together out of the silos they're talking about does make a difference. And the message we want to send is we're not done. This is just the beginning, and we're not going to finish until it's done right.
Thank you. I'm Councilmember Mark Squill in the 1st District, and as you know, all our districts sort of meet at Kensington Avenue, along with Councilmember Harity, who lives there and represents the whole city. But I think today's message is collaboration and coordination, as we heard, and it's really important to understand that, again, when we did work in silos, everybody was trying to do the right thing, but the collaboration and coordination that we see today through the DA's office, through the state police, through our city police officers, that's what makes these things happen. And what you saw today is an example of somebody who was out there poisoning our residents in the city of Philadelphia. They are providing chemicals that will kill people. And so this is very important to understand. As you saw with the resolution last week, where you're trying to help people get off the streets and get into treatment, right? It needs to be a bifurcated effort to make sure you're not only trying to help people get off the street who are addicted to these type of chemicals, but it's also the people who are providing these chemicals that are poisoning our residents, poisoning those people who live on the streets, and making sure there's consequences for them. So again, this is not an easy process. This will be a continued process, and as DA Krasner had said, the collaboration with all these folks, and a lot of these folks haven't even been in the room together ever. And, you know, the mayor's message is like one Philly and everybody working together to solve and come up with resolutions. You know, the courts are also involved in those meetings, have been brought into those meetings too. So it's not only the arrest and the prosecution, but then the courts and then possibly the sentencing if they're found guilty. All those things will be worked accordingly depending on each individual case. But I think the biggest message we take out of here is how the collaboration, coordination, how people are working together to come up with a solution that will address not only the people who are in addiction on the streets needing help and treatment, but those people that are making it really difficult for them and poisoning them day in and day out. So thank you.
Thank you kindly, members of council, and thank you so much for the work that you have been doing with us. Meeting to find that common ground and look for solutions moving forward, just one of which has been the suggestion now made for a few years, but not in that meeting is more recent, that there should be more wiretaps used in the city of Philadelphia. This is a vital tool. It took down Kip and Cambria. It's something that we could do more, but we have to have the machines, we have to have the training, we have to have the personnel. Doesn't cost a fortune. It can make a huge difference, but that's just one of the kinds of things, the kinds of nuts and bolts that we talk about within that room. All right, so I'm counting, I would say at least 13 possible members of the press. Oh, I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself. Before I count all of you, let me just invite to come forward Bill Fritzie, who's the chief of our Gun Violence Task Force. Gun Violence Task Force has been very involved in this and many other criminal matters where there's a crossover between gun activity and drug dealing, and I'd like him to come forward and make a few comments.
Good afternoon. In many ways, Gun Violence Task Force and the Dangerous Drug Offender Unit obviously have different areas of focus. And when we talk about silos, that even occurs within our own office of who's going to prosecute a case depending on the amount of drugs or who did the investigation. When we talked about priority corners, and we were talking about Kensington, one of the biggest issues that came up was that we knew that the focus needed to be more on drugs, but we knew that there was violence in that area that needed to be solved as well, because guns and drugs go together. Gun Violence Task Force has an immense amount of technology and ability with digital forensics to go into phones, to look at social media, and to track these things down. So when the DA talks about wiretaps, he also is incorporating that idea of using cell phones that are recovered at the scene for narcotics investigations. And what you're going to see going forward is more collaboration between even the two units within this office, Dangerous Drug Offender Unit and Gun Violence Task Force. In this particular case, you saw that firearms were recovered. In the past, a case like this might have progressed through the court with just the prosecution of the drugs and the guns together, and we would have been done. We will not be done in this case. The firearms are going to be examined. They will be put into the NIBIN system, the National Integrated Ballistics Information Network. The guns will be examined to determine if they're connected to any shootings or any types of violence, whether they were straw purchased, That will be investigated by the Gun Violence Task Force. Any leads that come out of that will then be sent to the homicide unit or the shooting investigation team or whatever part of police department or law enforcement is involved. So it's a multi-level use of the equipment that we now have and the ability that we now have within Gun Violence Task Force to try and make an impact within the drug market in the Kensington area and these priority corners. Thank you.